Hello there, my name is Josh Clarence. I'm with JK Live Photography. On today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about how I got schooled by an elderly photography couple. Yeah, they just ripped one of my pictures apart and made me feel about that small. So, anyways, stay tuned and here we go. Long time ago, I used to work for a photography studio and I actually thought I was pretty hot stuff there. You know, hey, what can you say? You know, I was young. It's actually about a photograph that I took back in 2010 of Multnomah Falls. I was there with my family and the camera that I had, it was my Canon 40D cameras. I had a wide angle lens and on the front of it, I ended up putting a polarizing filter on there. What that ends up doing is allows me to actually look through the water and make the water nice and clear, give it a little bit of, a little bit of color, a little bit of saturation. Well, mainly the reason I did it was because I just didn't want any water on my brand new lens that I bought. So on part of the picture, and we'll get to this, there's water droplets on the front element. Well, I tried photoshopping those out, but I didn't do quite as well of a job as I should have done. So anyways, here's the story. I was looking for some batteries. From one of my flashes, end up going to this photography store. I've never been there before, but I've always kind of driven by it and I've always wanted to check it out. So I get in there and I'm just looking around, and there's an elderly lady, and forgive me, I don't do accents very well, nor am I going to try, but she and her husband, I believe they were Irish. But I get to the store and I start looking around, and just because I've never been in there before. She's working with a customer and I'm just kind of looking, and I actually found the battery. Well, at least I found the slot that had a picture of it, but they were completely out. So after the lady finished up, I went up to her. I was like, "Hello, ma'am. My name is, Josh Clarence, yada yada yada. I'm looking for that particular battery. It's like a CR2 battery. For those of you, it's a CR2 battery. It's kind of a short, stubby battery, but it's a double. It's got two of them put together. I forget the actual name of it. So I went up to her and I'm like, "Hey, ma'am, I see that you guys are out. Are you guys going to be getting anytime soon?" And she's like, "I don't know. I don't even know what that is." And I'm like, "Oh, great. Here we go." So, okay, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. And I leave. A couple weeks later, I was talking with another photographer and they're like, "Oh yeah, they have those batteries there. Did you go find it, or did you find it?" I'm like, "I went. I didn't see anything." "Go check again. They're there because I just picked one up." I go there and I'm waiting in line. She's helping with the customer, and then I get to her and I'm like, "Hi, my name is," and she's like, "Oh, I remember you." Just like that, just straight face and everything. I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Well, do you have any more of those batteries?" "Yeah, we got a couple in." We get talking, and it's funny. I went there for the battery. I didn't even pick it up that time. What I ended up doing is she's, I was like, "Yeah, I'm a photographer. I work for this studio, yada yada." She's like, "Oh, you're a photographer?" I was like, "Yes." She's like, "Well, do you have any pictures with you?" And at that time, I actually kept 4x6 prints, 4x6 and 5x7 prints, just small, because that way I had them with me and I can take them anywhere and show anybody. So I was like, "Yeah, you know what, ma'am, give me one moment. I'll go out to my car, go grab them." I brought them back in, laid them out for her, and she's like, "They're okay." Okay. I didn't say anything. In my mind, I'm like, these photos look great. I know they look great because I've had lots of people tell me so. And here's this old lady, kind of grumpy lady, telling me they don't. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't buy it. And she's like, "You know what, my husband," she's like, "can you come back tomorrow? My husband will be here and she'll talk to you about these." Sure, whatever. Okay, so anyways, I leave the store, I get home and I realize, man, I didn't even buy the battery. Next day, I go back to the store. This time, instead of bringing a 4x6 print or 5x7, I brought a 11x14 print of Multnomah Falls. I was actually gonna have it framed and everything, but I just never got to it. So I brought that in. She introduced me to her husband, and he's a real gruff guy. I forget how old he was. He probably must have been in his 70s. He's like, "Oh, so you're the photographer with the pictures?" I was like, "Yes." So he's like, "Well, let me take a look." This photo of Multnomah Falls, I was very proud of it. I thought I did an excellent job on it. I mean, the color on there, it's beautiful, it's saturated, it looks gorgeous. Once again, I've had lots of people tell me it looks great. So I pulled it out and I showed him, and I'm kind of there with a smug look, just kind of waiting for him to be like, "Ooh, yeah, this looks great." And he's like, "What's wrong with the water?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, sir?" He's like, "Why is your water blue?" I was like, I was just trying to give it a little bit of color. He's like, that's not the color of water. Oh, okay, well, I was just trying to give it a little bit of pop, you know, make it look a little nice. And he's like, no, that's not the color of water. Water's more clear color. Yours is like blue. It's like fluorescent. Is there something radioactive in your water? You know, because I lived over in the Tri-Cities, you know, that was kind of a running joke amongst everybody there. Well, and I was just ha 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 ha. And he's like, why is there so much color in your photo? So you must have found the saturation slider. And I just bit my lip because I told him, I was like, I wanted to give it a little bit of extra color. I'm trying to make colors pop. I wanted to make it look a little nicer. Most photos that I've seen there, they kind of have a dull look of Multnomah Falls. And that's a beautiful area, but they've got a dull look. I've seen stuff at different stores of pictures of Multnomah Falls that are selling for like $500-600, and I'm like, holy smokes, that looks terrible. So anyways, he starts berating me about the colors, he starts berating me about the lighting, and then he's like, what's this smudging stuff over here? And I thought I took care of it, but apparently I didn't do it well enough. And I was like, well, sir, I had a polarizer filter on the front of my lens, and I ended up getting water spots in there. He was like, well, how long was your exposure for? I'm like, about, I thought it was 30 seconds. When I checked the data on there, it said 22 seconds. I was like, I told him 30 seconds. I was like, 30 seconds. He's like, why did you have it open for so long? You know, and I told him once again, I've got a filter on there. I've got the polarizing filter. It's going to cut away a little bit of the exposure time. He's like, you didn't need that. And he just starts going off on me about how I don't need filters. I don't need any kind of, you know, gimmicky stuff like that. He's like, are you a real professional? He's like, are you a professional photographer or are you an amateur? And it was another slap in the face. So I just bit my tongue because I don't know these guys. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to act like I'm rude. And, you know, it's, after I buy the battery and I get out of there, when am I ever going to go back? So, he goes on and on and on about the exposure time, and he's like, your lighting, the image is too dark. You're not set correctly. Blah blah blah. He's like, what aperture are you using? I was like, well, I was at f/22. He's like, why were you at f/22? And he just grilled the crap out of me. Really, just grilled me. I'd never been like that before. I work at a studio. Everybody's like, oh, Josh, your pictures look so great. They look wonderful. Your landscapes, yada yada. So I mean, that's what I was used to, and he just came at me like a pit bull. So anyways, I leave out of there. I get back home and I'm all flustered. My ego's hurt. I mean, it's just, I'm not feeling very good at this point. And I realize I didn't buy the battery. I didn't buy the battery. And I was like, you know, at this point, I'm not going to go back to that old crotchety couple. I know I said crotchety. I'm not going to go back to that couple for them to berate me like that again. I know that I'm pretty good as a photographer and I don't need them, you know, barking stuff at me. So anyways, a few weeks go by. I tried to avoid going there because I'm like, you know what? No need to have that kind of negativity in my life. But here's the thing, and as with most people, it just kept picking at me in the inside that, wait a second, somebody doesn't like my photo. Somebody doesn't like my photo. And nowadays, the way I am now, I care, but I don't care. But if you're a photographer and you're trying to give me constructive criticism, then I care a lot because you obviously see something that I don't. And that's what was bugging me, is that they saw something that I didn't. A couple weeks go by and I really needed this battery. I was going to shoot, I had a big shoot going on and I needed that for it. So I go back, you know, and I bite my tongue and I just kind of head down and I just go in there and I saw the batteries, and these are expensive batteries. They're like $12 a piece. And by now they're probably like $15 to $18. But she had a couple of them up on the shelf, up on the little hook, and they were marked down to $6. And I'm like, score. I'm a pretty honest person. So I grab the batteries and I go up to her and, you know, I've got my head down. I'm trying to avoid looking at her and this and that. I'm like, ma'am, do you mean to have these for $6? I mean, these are usually a lot more. And so she looked it up right then and there and she's like, oh yeah, these are a lot more. We've got these mispriced. She's like, but you know, because you're honest, I'll give them to you for $6. So I bought a couple of them. And that was cool because what's funny is I still have them because they last a long time. She's like, wait a second, you're that photographer that came in that one time. She's like, let me go get my husband. My husband's here. He wants to talk to you. She went and grabbed her husband and he comes back out real gruff. He's like, did you bring any more photos? Once again, I always keep photos with me in my car just in case people want to look at them. And so I'm like, yeah, let me go grab some. So I bring my photos in and I lay them out. First thing he says to me is like, why are these framed? And I'm like, sir, I was like, you know, I've got a lot of photos. I've got a lot of ones that I have printed. If I frame all of them, my whole house would be, you know, it's sitting in frames. He's like, well, you need to get them matted and you need to get them plastic and put them out so people can purchase them. He's like, if you're proud of them, are you not proud of them? Another jab at me, just. So at that point, he's looking at my photos and he's not saying anything. I was waiting for just him just to come at me like, like a ton of bricks. He didn't say anything. He's just kind of, He's like, follow me. We go over to his shelf that has all of his photos. He pulls a couple of them out and he's like, take a look at this. This is what my exposure was. This is what this was. These are my settings are this, and this. And he starts trying to teach me there. And at first my guard was still up. So I wasn't wanting to listen to him. But then after a moment, I was like, okay, let's see what he has to say. So he's like, this is my picture of my waterfall. He's like, look how the water looks like water. There's no weird, odd colors in there. Your 20 seconds that you had open, he's like, you only need a couple of seconds. You're trying to show movement of the water. You're not trying to show a complete blur of the water, which my picture, which I'll have posted up here in a little bit, kind of has that. And I kind of like it, but at the same time, it made sense what he was talking about. So this is where I learned probably one of the biggest lessons of my entire life. And this was back then. And I bit my tongue, I shut my mouth, and I opened up my ears just to listen to him. So he starts telling me, and he starts giving me advice. He starts giving me, quote unquote, tricks of the trade. And in my mind, I'm like, how does he know all of this stuff? I mean, granted, yeah, you open a photography, you have a photography establishment, you're selling film cameras. I'm sure you know something, but I mean, so he's giving me some tips of the trade, quote unquote, trade secrets. And I kept thinking, how does this guy know? How does he know all this stuff? Because he's giving me very specific stuff. I mean, he's not just saying, oh, your picture's too bright. Oh, this is. I mean, he's telling me, you know what? You're about to stop and a half overexposed on this area. You're stop underexposed on this area. This and this and this, and he's being very specific, very detailed. So once again, I shut my mouth, opened my ears, and listened to what he had to say. I was there for about 25 minutes, and I was just listening to what he had to tell me. He brought up another photo, and he's like, take a look at this beach photo. He's like, it's very simple. But he's like, here's the thing between a professional and an amateur, or a professional and a non-professional. He's like, as a professional, I could hand over an amateur my expensive gear, the best film. He shot on film, the best camera, the best film, the best lighting, everything, put them out at the exact same time, same place, same location, and they'll never be able to get the same shot. And I was like, why is that? And he's like, because I went out there at a certain hour. And he was talking about the magic hour, quote unquote. Basically, sundown. There's sunrise and sundown, but he was referring to sundown. And he's like, part of becoming a photographer is not just having the equipment; it's knowing how to use it correctly. It's knowing the weather, knowing the time of the day, knowing what the best location is, knowing what the best settings are for the client that you're working with. It's not so much just to have, oh, I've got a camera, I've got a light, I've got this, I've got, it's so much more than that. And that's something, it was a lesson that I never had anybody instill upon me. So I did buy the batteries at the time. Yay me. So I bought the batteries, and before I get off of that story, right before I left, this was the critical point. He said to me, he's like, listen, he's like, you do, your pictures look really nice. I think you need to go back and work on the basics. Be a little more confident when you're trying to compose your picture, and just take a little bit more time. He's like, just because you're shooting on digital doesn't mean that you have free reign just to shoot as many photos as you want. He's like, take the time to compose your shot, and then just fire off a couple of shots just to get what you need. I was like, interesting. Makes sense. So. And he told me right at the very, very last thing he said, I was the photography instructor at the community college for the last 25 years. I just retired. My wife and I, we'd opened up this camera store for a while, and now she and I are doing this together. At that point, I felt like that. My ego was just, huge like this, and I really didn't want to hear anything this guy had to say until I found out that, he had some credibility. He was trying to share that knowledge with me, but I was too closed off. Yes, this is about Multnomah Falls and the picture, but I would say this is more of a podcast about humility, and how I think that's how we need to be sometimes. Just need to open up our ears and listen. I had a great manager, and I'm really sad that he ended up leaving, but good for him, and moving forward, He was always the one that looked at my photos. He was always the one that critiqued them. And at that point, I didn't have anybody else to critique my photos because I'm not going to say I was better than everybody, but I was on a different plane than everybody else. I don't know. I was on a different level. I don't mean that badly. I'm not talking poorly about them. We were just two different peas in two different pods. At that point, I asked him, do you mind if I bring more pictures for you to take a look at? Yes, bring them. I'd love to see them. So for the next couple years before we ended up moving, he and his wife, his wife, they were the only couple that I would bring my photos to. And I kid you not, I bring them, I'd take another beautiful shot or wedding photo, or here's a senior photo or whatever. I'd bring it to him, put it in front of him, and just smile because I'm like, all right, I can't wait for him. This is kind of silly, but I can't wait for him to start ripping into me because that's when I start learning. He showed me what I did wrong. I'm sorry, not what I did wrong. He showed me how to make my photos better. He taught me a few techniques. If anything, he reinforced everything that I already knew, and he challenged me to do better. So I don't know if they're still alive. It's been a number of years since I've been back there, but if you guys are watching, thank you for putting up with me and taking the time to invest a little bit of time in me. Especially when I was so young and unwilling to learn. So anyways, I'm going to be posting this picture of Multnomah Falls. It is a beautiful shot. I've since gone back and taken a few more shots, so I'm going to add a couple other ones in there. This shot is always available for purchase, as all my photos are, and I'll put a link down below so you can go to my website and check it out. So yeah, there it is, Multnomah Falls. So once again, my name is Josh Gutierrez. I'm with JK Live Photography, and this is the story behind the photograph.